What if one of the most dangerous films ever released wasn't hidden from the public, but shown to everyone in plain sight? In 1988, a low-budget science fiction movie arrived in theaters with little fanfare. Critics dismissed it. Studios underestimated it. Most audiences saw it as just another cult classic from the mind of horror filmmaker John Carpenter. But decades later, a disturbing question refuses to disappear. What if They Live wasn't simply a movie? What if it was a warning? Welcome back to Shadow Reel, the channel where we open the forbidden files hidden behind cinema's most unsettling productions. Tonight, we begin our investigation into a film that many believe exposed something far larger than its creators ever admitted. A movie about invisible forces controlling society. A movie about hidden messages embedded in everyday life. A movie about a man who discovers that the reality around him is not real at all. The deeper researchers, conspiracy theorists, media analysts, and devoted fans have dug into They Live, the stranger the story has become. Because behind the film's famous sunglasses lies a labyrinth of questions involving propaganda, consumer conditioning, subliminal influence, corporate power, and a vision of society that feels more relevant today than it did nearly 40 years ago. And that's where this investigation begins. Because when we started examining the production history of They Live, we expected to find a fascinating cult movie. Instead, we found a trail of interviews, forgotten statements, strange creative decisions, and recurring themes that continue to echo through modern culture with almost unsettling precision. Some viewers believe the film predicted the future. Others believe it revealed mechanisms of control that most people never notice. And some insist that John Carpenter accidentally created one of the most important hidden commentary films ever released by Hollywood. Coincidence? Social criticism? Or something far more disturbing? Tonight, we're opening the first file in our new cluster, Movies That Changed Reality. To understand why They Live still haunts audiences decades later, we have to go back to the beginning, to a struggling filmmaker, a mysterious short story, and the moment an idea emerged that would transform a simple science fiction film into one of cinema's most enduring forbidden investigations. But before we open that file, I want to ask you something. Have you ever watched a film that stayed with you long after it ended? Not because of the story, but because it felt like it was trying to tell you something hidden beneath the surface? If They Live has ever made you question the world around you, or if this is your first time exploring its mysteries, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a moment when reality suddenly looked different than it did before? I read every theory, every perspective, and many of the investigations featured on this channel begin with observations shared by viewers just like you. And if you're fascinated by forbidden movie files, hidden meanings, lost production secrets, and the films that seem to blur the line between fiction and reality, take a second to support the investigation. Leave a like on this video. It helps more people discover these hidden stories and allows us to keep opening files that most channels never touch. And if you're new to Shadow Reel, subscribe and join us. Because this isn't a channel about movie reviews. It's a channel about uncovering what was left behind. Now, with the first file officially open, let's go back to where this strange signal began. The origin of the signal. Now, with the first file officially open, let's go back to where this strange signal began. Every forbidden investigation has an origin point, a moment when an idea appears, almost unnoticed, before growing into something far larger than anyone expected. For They Live, that moment didn't begin in Hollywood. It began with a short story. In 1963, writer Ray Nelson published a little-known science fiction story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning. On the surface, it seemed like classic speculative fiction, but hidden beneath its pages was a disturbing premise. What if humanity was being controlled by forces hiding in plain sight? What if most people were sleepwalking through reality without ever realizing it? Years later, that story would find its way into the hands of filmmaker John Carpenter. And this is where the investigation starts becoming interesting. Because Carpenter wasn't simply looking for another science fiction project. By the late 1980s, he had become increasingly frustrated with the social and political climate surrounding him. Consumer culture was exploding. Advertising was everywhere. Television was becoming more influential than ever. Wealth and power appeared concentrated in fewer hands while ordinary people struggled to keep up. Sound familiar? What fascinated Carpenter wasn't the idea of aliens. It was the idea of invisible influence. The possibility that people could be guided, manipulated, conditioned, and distracted without even noticing. When he adapted Nelson's story, he didn't just create a movie monster. He created a metaphor, a forbidden mirror, a cinematic investigation disguised as entertainment. And that's exactly why They Live feels different from most science fiction films of its era. The aliens are almost secondary. The real threat is the system they represent. As production began, Carpenter made a series of creative choices that would shape the film's legacy. The famous sunglasses weren't just a visual gimmick. They became a symbolic device, a way of revealing hidden layers beneath everyday reality. The moment the protagonist puts them on, billboards transform into commands. Advertisements become instructions. Authority figures appear in a completely different light. Obey, consume, conform. Simple words, yet somehow impossible to forget. And perhaps that's why the film continues to resonate decades later. Because beneath the science fiction, viewers recognize something deeply human. The uneasy feeling that reality is not always what it seems. The feeling that important truths can remain hidden behind familiar images. The feeling that sometimes the most powerful messages are the ones nobody notices. As this file continued to unfold, we discovered that the deeper meaning of They Live would become far more controversial than its creators could have imagined. And that's where the next layer of this investigation begins. Before we move forward, I want to know something. If you've ever had a moment where a movie changed the way you look at the world, comment below. I saw the signal. And if this investigation is pulling you deeper into the file, let that be your mark in the archive before we uncover what happened next. The signal spreads. If the origin of the signal explains where They Live came from, the next question is far more unsettling. Why did its message refuse to disappear? Most films belong to their time. They reflect the fears, hopes, and anxieties of a specific era before slowly fading into history. But They Live followed a different path. Instead of becoming less relevant with age, many viewers felt it became more relevant. And that's where this investigation takes an unexpected turn. Because shortly after its release, audiences began noticing something unusual. The film's central idea wasn't tied to one political movement, one decade, or one specific event. It touched something deeper, a universal fear that has followed humanity throughout history. The fear that powerful systems can shape perception itself. Think about that for a moment. Not controlling people through force, not controlling people through fear, but controlling what people see, controlling what they believe is normal, controlling the narrative so effectively that most individuals never realize they're participating in it. This is the hidden layer that transformed They Live from entertainment into a cultural phenomenon. Over the years, researchers, film analysts, conspiracy communities, media scholars, and countless viewers have projected their own interpretations onto the film. Some saw it as a critique of consumerism. Others viewed it as a warning about mass media. Some believed it exposed mechanisms of social conditioning. Others argued it predicted the rise of algorithmic influence long before the internet dominated everyday life. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that none of these interpretations completely cancel the others out. Instead, they stack together, like layers of a signal becoming clearer over time. What makes They Live so powerful isn't that it tells viewers what to think. It's that it forces viewers to question how they think. The famous sunglasses became more than a movie prop. They evolved into a symbol recognized around the world, a metaphor for seeing beyond appearances, for looking behind headlines, advertisements, public images, and carefully constructed narratives. And whether someone agrees with the film's message or not, its core question remains impossible to ignore. What if reality is filtered? What if every society creates invisible frameworks that shape perception? What if the things we accept as normal deserve a second look? These questions help turn They Live into something rare, a film that never truly ended. Every new generation seems to rediscover it. Every technological shift seems to make people revisit it. Every cultural debate seems to bring its imagery back into circulation. The signal kept transmitting. But as we dug deeper into production records, interviews, and behind-the-scenes accounts, another mystery emerged. A mystery that had less to do with the message on screen and more to do with the people who created it. Because behind the camera, John Carpenter was fighting battles of his own. Battles with studios, battles with expectations, and battles over what the film was actually trying to say. The deeper we looked, the more it became clear that the real story of They Live wasn't only about hidden messages inside the movie. It was about the risks involved in putting those messages there in the first place. The price of the message. The deeper we looked, the more it became clear that the real story of They Live wasn't only about hidden messages inside the movie. It was about the risks involved in putting those messages there in the first place. By the time They Live reached theaters in 1988, John Carpenter was already a respected filmmaker, but he wasn't operating from a position of absolute power. The film was produced on a modest budget, received mixed reactions from critics, and initially wasn't treated as a major cultural event. In fact, many reviewers at the time focused on its unusual tone, its strange blend of science fiction and social commentary, and its refusal to fit neatly into a single category. But sometimes the most important signals aren't recognized when they are first transmitted. They're recognized years later. As decades passed, They Live began a transformation few films ever experience. What started as a cult movie evolved into something closer to a cultural artifact. A forbidden file repeatedly reopened by new generations searching for answers to questions the film never directly answered. And perhaps that's because Carpenter himself was surprisingly open about his intentions. He repeatedly explained that the film was, in large part, a criticism of unchecked consumerism and the growing influence of wealth and power over society. Yet something fascinating happened once the movie entered the public consciousness. It stopped belonging entirely to its creator. The audience took over. People began finding meanings beyond those originally intended. New interpretations emerged. New theories appeared. New investigations unfolded. The signal escaped the source. And maybe that's why They Live continues to endure. Not because it provides certainty, but because it creates doubt. Not because it reveals the truth, but because it encourages viewers to question the truths they already accept. When the protagonist puts on those famous sunglasses, the moment resonates far beyond the screen. Deep down, almost everyone understands the symbolism immediately. The desire to see clearly, the desire to remove the filters, the desire to know whether the world is exactly what it appears to be. That desire is timeless. It's older than cinema, older than television, older than any conspiracy theory, hidden message, or forbidden investigation. And perhaps that is the real reason They Live never disappeared. Because the film isn't ultimately about aliens. It's about perception. It's about influence. It's about the invisible forces, social, cultural, economic, psychological, that shape human behavior every single day. Whether those forces are as dramatic as the film suggests is a matter of interpretation. But the question itself remains alive. And that question is the true legacy of They Live. As we close this file, we're left with a possibility that is both unsettling and strangely empowering. Maybe the most important pair of sunglasses was never the one shown on screen. Maybe the real lens is curiosity, the willingness to look twice, to question assumptions, to examine narratives, to keep searching when easy answers are offered. Because once a signal has been detected, it becomes impossible to pretend it was never there. And with that, the first file in our movies that changed reality investigation is officially closed. Or perhaps only archived. If you've stayed with us until this final page of the file, leave the words "the signal remains" in the comments. Not as a theory, not as a conclusion, but as a reminder that some stories don't end when the credits roll. They continue transmitting. And somewhere in the darkness, another file is already waiting to be opened. Shadow Reel will return investigating the forbidden archive of the film The Matrix. Every file has a story. Some should never be opened.